This is the Gerry Callahan Show.
Yes, it is finally happening. We have some good news, some great news on this Wednesday, July 16th. I think, I hope, I pray that today is the day after 45, 50 years of Republicans telling us that they wanted to fund NPR and PBS. After 50 years of talking about what a waste and how these people should be able to make it on their own in the free market if they actually provide a good product. Of 50 years of lies saying that rural communities rely on the weather service from NPR, and children in Oklahoma or Nebraska have only one option if they want good quality children's TV. They've been lying to us for 50 years. It finally and at last comes to an end today. I think, I hope, I don't know why, I'm getting unnaturally excited about this because we've been hearing about it for so long. And my question every time the Republicans have the majority or the Republicans have the White House is, okay, do it. Enough talk about defunding PBS and NPR. Just do it. They are getting more than $500 million a year from the taxpayers to puke out left-wing propaganda. They are more left-wing, more woke, more radical than CNN or MSNBC or ABC or PBS or ABC, CBS, NBC, whatever. They are as woke, as radical, as left-wing. They are pure left-wing propaganda, and they always have been. And finally, at last, the day has come. This is from last night. CNN writes, the Senate narrowly cleared 2 procedural hurdles Tuesday to move closer to a final vote on the GOP effort to codify DOJ spending cuts as a deadline to act on the White House priority looms. They are going to do this today. I believe they have to have it done by Friday. I don't see why they should wait. Last night they took a vote, this procedural vote. It was 50-50. Which makes me sick, to be honest with you. 3 Republicans, Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, and of course, Susan Collins, voted against the DOJ cuts, the $9 billion, all the waste and fraud and theft that DOJ uncovered. They voted against these rescission cuts. This is just, these people are just such a disgrace. Honest to God, they should be kicked out of the caucus. They should be kicked off every championship. They should hold up. They should be shunned by the party. Why? Why would a Republican? I realize they're rhinos. I realize they hate Trump, but we've gone over this. We've talked about the Sesame Street in Iraq and the drag shows in Ecuador and condoms for Gaza, all the waste, which wasn't actually waste. We've made the case over and over again. It's theft. 88% of the money never left D.C. It was stolen by well-connected Democrats. Musk and DOJ exposed that, promised to cut it. Finally, it's going to be cut. And it took J.D. Vance to break the tie because Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and the corpse of Mitch McConnell are devoted to protecting these scams run by Democrats. It's remarkable. I understand these people are traitors. They are backstabbing swamp creatures. But you really, that's really your stance on this, Susan Collins? That you want to continue funding these NGOs? You're going to continue funding these Democrat scams? You want to continue funding NPR and PBS? Well, it's not going to work. You did your best to protect your friends in the swamp. It failed. This 50-50 vote was enough. J.D. Vance broke the tie. Now they take a full vote. I assume it'll pass. NPR and PBS will have to make it on their own. We've been told for years that they could do that. If they had to, they have plenty. They could sell ads. They can get donations. They can make it on their own. There was never a good case for why we had to fund this. It never made any sense. As I've explained many times, I was in a radio studio. Smitty here was in a radio studio right next to the the headquarters of PBS and NPR in Boston, it was palatial. It looked like NASA.
It's been referred to as a monument to their irrelevance.
They would burn through millions. They had the greatest equipment, the greatest studio, the greatest location. I mean, the rent had to be through the roof. They have a big video screen that you could see from the highway to promote these shows that nobody watched. They have some crappy midday radio show where the host makes almost $500,000 a year, Jim Browdy. Nobody listens. They get no ratings. They are welfare mamas. That's what they are. They have been on the dole for years. And finally, after, again, decades of promising to do something about it, it appears like Republicans will finally do it. CNN writes, PBS and NPR stations are on the verge of losing the federal funding that has helped keep them on air for decades. That's accurate. The Senate is preparing to vote in a rare measure called a rescission, which would claw back money that's already been budgeted by Congress, including nearly $1.1 billion in funding for the public media. $1.1 billion we've been given to these leeches. And it was a Republican Congress that allocated this money. You know what? They have disappointed us in so many ways. The big, beautiful bill is full of waste and pork. We know that. We've talked about this. This is simple. This is something we can all understand. We don't have to pay for the crap that they push out there, the left-wing pablum that they push out there. We can bring an end to that, finally, and they're going to do it. They write, over time, some local stations may be forced off the air, while other stations may have fewer shows to broadcast. Stations may have fewer resources for news reporting and educational program, but the exact impacts are hard to predict because the public and radio TV system is complex. I don't care. Good luck. Do what you can to survive. Sell your ads. Have some layoffs. Have cut the pay of some of these fat cats, these welfare mamas. Whatever it takes. You have no right to our money. You are propagandists. I will say the day that NPR and PBS died was, let me get this straight, it was in March, when the great Brandon Gill and many others, congressional Republicans, had NPR CEO Catherine Mayer, this left-wing nut who just hates Trump, hates Republicans, was making, I forget, was she making like $800,000 a year? She still is. She went before Congress on March 26th, and it didn't go well. It was very simple to understand. It was very deliberate and measured, but Brandon Gill took this woman apart and exposed her for what she is, a Democrat operative. Here's just a quick clip of this performance by the great Brandon Gill.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
Tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
I apologize, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall.
She said she didn't read the book, and it says, you said you took a day off from work so you could read the book and fully comprehend The Case for Reparations. That was just one moment. The whole thing was great. We talked about it at the time. They asked, she had tweets calling Trump evil, and the other lady, the PBS lady, same thing. They're just radical left-wingers who've been on the dole for much too long. This should be easy. This should be simple, just like eliminating condoms for Gaza or drag shows in Ecuador. I don't understand why it's such a struggle. When Doge exposed this months ago, it was like, okay, we're done with that now. That's gone. 40 billion for USAID, that's gone. And yet it's a struggle because these Republican senators and Republican congressmen are such cowards. They're such weaklings, spineless squishes, and you have these traitors in their midst. As I've said many times, the Democrats don't have any Susan Collinses. They don't have Lisa Murkowski, and they certainly don't have Mitch McConnell, this vindictive, old, decrepit fool who just hates Trump, who just wants to obstruct at every turn, who's not going to be in the Senate much longer. He's going to be, he's not going to be alive much longer. He's in the throes of dementia, but he still has that bitterness, that grievance where he has to stop Trump at every turn, including not supporting the effort to cut all these scams, including NPR. But they can't stop it, which is great to see. Hopefully it'll be done today. We can celebrate tomorrow. And the people who've been sucking on the public memory for decades will finally and at last have to earn an honest living. Something tells me there'll be major layoffs. I love when they do this. When you threaten to fund them, they say, it's not that big a deal. It's only 1%. And then when you actually go through with it, they say, it'll devastate us. It'll destroy us. Well, that's the plan. That's the point. You should be, if you can't make it on your own, you shouldn't be able to make it. We shouldn't be sitting here funding you if you can't make it in the free market. But thankfully, it's finally going to happen over the dead body of Mitch McConnell and Susan Collins. They're going to get rid of many of these scams. I mean, $9 billion is nothing. It is a grain of sand on the beach, but it's symbolic. We told this all through the Doge efforts in the first month, 2 months of the administration. We're saying, good, these things are scams, these are lies, this is theft, these are crimes, and they're finally going to uncover them and eliminate them, and that's a good thing. Then we need the arrests. I'm not saying that Catherine Mayer or Jim Browdy should be arrested, but I do believe that Stacey Abrams and other people who've been the beneficiaries of these scams should be brought in for questioning. But all right, we got so much to get to on this wild day. It is not going away, Smitty. The Epstein story, despite Donald Trump's efforts, this again is such a miscalculation on the part of Trump and the Trump administration. They're still insisting we move on from this boring story. That's Trump's take. And you know what? Nobody is moving on. I thought there'd be some real devoted MAGA people who would echo his words. I guess there are a few. But for the most part, we saw what happened at the Turning Point event in Tampa. We've heard from many Trump supporters, Megyn Kelly and Bannon and Laura Loomer and Tucker Carlson. Nobody's moving on, and we should not move on. We should not. Trump was asked about this yesterday, and to be honest, I am shocked at how tone deaf he is, and shocked at how Trump thinks we're going to all get in line. He actually says the story's boring. Boring? We're talking about sex trafficking. We're talking about the sexual exploitation of children, hundreds, if not thousands of children. That's many things. That's outrageous, that's scandalous, that's infuriating, that's sickening. It's not boring. I'm not sure who's advising Trump on this one, but he's getting bad advice. Here was Trump yesterday when asked about the...
I know you've urged people to move on, but I'm curious, why do you think your supporters in particular have been so interested in the Epstein story and so upset about how it's been handled? Why do you think that is?
Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say let them have it.
Good. Let's have the credible information. He doesn't understand. His people, his team, his guys, Patel and Bongino and Bondi kept this thing going. They piqued our curiosity, our interest when they said they had the goods. We were told during the campaign, hell, we've been told for years that we would get the information, the names. And you can say, we don't have, there's no list, it's been destroyed, then tell us who destroyed it. You can't say it's boring. We're talking about, according to Pam Bondi, 254 victims, most of them children, being systematically abused by a billionaire and his friends. And we're supposed to think it's just it's just the Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, nobody else. It is absurd to think we're going to accept that explanation and move on. It's not going to happen. We have the latest on this. This is from Wired magazine. The metadata shows that the video from the prison that we were told, this proves he killed himself, is missing 2 minutes and 53 seconds, which were removed from the video. I'm sorry. That's interesting. That's curious. We want to know more. And this is not going to work. Sometimes we underestimate Trump. Sometimes, he's got a larger plan and it doesn't quite form for a while. This is a mistake. You cannot tell people, you cannot say that's coming from the fake news. It's certainly coming from the fake news. It's coming from Democrats and Republicans. It's coming from left-wing media, right-wing media. It's coming from MAGA influencers who are his most important and devoted following. Those people, they're Charlie Kirks and others. They want more. They want to know why. Why are we living through this cover-up still? Why are we not getting information? It's not going to work. Donald Trump has to understand that. His team, Susie Wiles, and they have to understand this is unacceptable. You can't say it's boring, it's old news, it's fake news, we're moving on. CNN did the poll, little Harry Enton, their poll guy who's the theater kid, and he shows that it doesn't matter what party, Democrats, Republicans, independents, nobody wants to move on. Now, maybe Democrats are into this now because I think it'll hurt Trump. They had no interest in releasing the information under Biden, but they're all in demanding they release the information, and so are Republicans. Here's Harry Enton, the CNN theater kid, explaining how everybody wants the real story on Jeffrey Epstein in the sex trafficking scandal.
Yeah, I would say that the word is dissatisfied. That is how Americans feel in terms of the releases so far of the Epstein case. Take a look here, Epstein case, amount of info release. The winner here, 50% dissatisfied. Doesn't matter, 29%, not heard enough, 17%. But look at the bottom of your screen. The percentage that are satisfied is just 3%. That's 1, that's 2, that is just 3%. I feel like the count on Sesame Street. Just 3% of Americans are satisfied so far with the amount of information released. The clear winner in this particular case is 50%. Half of the public is dissatisfied, at least so far.
At least that's zero. 3% might as well be zero. Nobody is satisfied. And I know Trump's team, they look at polls, they follow polls. This is a bad poll. And it's not going to change. You can't get people to move on by just saying, it's boring. Boring? Boring. We think really rich, powerful, well-connected men, famous men, were on that island abusing children. That's what we believe. That's what we believe for 2 decades. And you're going to tell us today that that's not true, that there's no list, that there's really no evidence, and it's time to move on. I don't even understand how you get to that point where you think that that your most loyal supporters are going to take your advice and move on. You know what? When somebody on social media or on cable news says they're ready to move on, they look like fools. They look like just sheep. It doesn't look authentic, genuine. It doesn't. If you say, I'm ready to move on, we've had enough of this. That guy, Rob Smith, I don't even know who he's with that. He went on with Piers Morgan and said, nobody cares about this story. And as soon as he says it, you say, wow, they got to him. Somebody paid him off or promised him something. There's no honest broker. There's no legitimate influencer out there who says, move on. It's boring. It's old news. The only reason you would do that is if they got to you. They spun you. They convinced you to carry their message. And you look like a fool if you do that. Here's the rest of Harry Enton telling you about how the public is not ready to move on.
And let's break it down by party. Okay, Epstein case, amount of info released. Look at this. You get 43% of lean GOP, that's Republicans and independents who lean towards the Republican Party, who are dissatisfied. Look at this. Just 4% satisfied? My goodness gracious. When you only have 4% that is with Donald Trump on a particular issue, that is ridiculously low. I've never seen anything quite like it. How about lean Democrat? 60% dissatisfied. Compare that to 3% who are satisfied.
4%. And you know what the problem they have is time's not going to change that. They could delay, they could drag this out. It could be 3.5 more years of saying move, and no one will move on. In fact, it'll get worse because it's clear there's a cover-up. It's clear for some reason Donald Trump doesn't want to tell. He said, release all the credible evidence. Okay, do that today. Do it today. Mike Johnson, John Thune, whoever, Bam Bondi, release it all today. Bring in Ghislaine Maxwell to testify today. The longer you drag it out, the more questions we have, the more suspicions we have that some really powerful people actually got to Donald Trump. I can't come up with no other explanation. There's no way Trump legitimately believes this is boring and old news and fake news. No way. So he thinks there'll be real damage to, the country, the markets, our allies. He thinks there are real high stakes here, and his strategy is to deflect and delay. And the more he does it, the worse it's going to get. It's not going to work, as we've said for days and days now. But apparently, that's the strategy they have decided on. All right, we got so much to get to. I got to get to the Trump on Adam Schiff. We'll get to that. Adam Schiff's in a little bit of trouble. There's nothing better than watching these snakes, these liars like Adam Schiff, who spent 3 years literally lying on a nightly basis about the Russia hoax, who said he had evidence, he'd seen it, he could prove it. It was all lies. He dragged the country through that. He cost the country tens of millions of dollars, and he might be in a little bit of trouble. And of course, Donald Trump is enjoying that. And just the most insane story out of Providence, Rhode Island, where the heroes of ICE continue to do God's work. They snatched up a MS-13 gang member, a fentanyl dealer, and the local politicians aren't happy about it, of course. They're not upset that there was an MS-13 drug dealer in the neighborhood. They're upset that he got arrested. This is the Democrats' party right now, fighting to defend and protect MS-13 fentanyl dealers. We'll get to that and more, but first.
Excuse me.
Nothing wakes you up like losing a loved one. I know, I've been there a little too often recently. You think, what about me? You do a lot of soul searching and you wonder, will my family be prepared financially if something were to happen to me? The last thing you want is your family to worry about how they're going to pay the bills. With life insurance from Ethos, your family is protected. I know it's not a pleasant thought, but you know what's worse? Wondering, will my family be able to stay in the house? Will my kids be able to go to college? Will my wife be able to pay the bills? Life insurance from Ethos gives you peace of mind. I know it did for me. It's one big bucket list thing you get to cross off. I know traditional life insurance can be complicated, but Ethos isn't. Ethos makes it easy. So protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/Newsmax. That's ethos.com/Newsmax. I was flipping channels this morning. I was up, following the news, do my show prep. And of course, I stopped on CNN. My mistake. Sometimes I go to CNN just in case they were playing a Scott Jennings segment. We'll get to the great Scott Jennings, who had himself a night last night. But this was this morning. They did a piece. This is the goal, the strategy, the objective of the mainstream media, Trump-hating media. They look at the great success Trump has on the border. This update is just remarkable. In June, we had the lowest number of crossings at the southern border ever. 0. They encountered 25,000. They released 0 into the country for the second month in a row. 0. A year ago, June 2024, 28,000 illegal aliens released into the country. This June, 0. It is just an incredible success. These people, ICE, BP, the Border Patrol, are just doing amazing work. We should salute them and celebrate them. But here's what you can't do that if you're at CNN or MSNBC or ABC. You can't. New York Times. Your goal is to find someone who will tug at your heartstrings, some illegal alien who's, just working hard, trying to put food on the table and take care of his family, who's being forced by the Trump administration to leave everything, his family, his home, his job. They're out there, and CNN and MSNBC are not going to stop looking for them, exploiting them. They did a 5-minute piece on a Pittsburgh family, a father, a mother, and 3 kids. The wife and the kids are all American citizens, I assume, anchor babies. The father, he's been here like 20 years. He hasn't got his citizenship. I assume he didn't care. He just figured he could stay forever. And he's being forced to move back to Mexico, and the family's going to go with him. That's a good thing. That's another great success of the Trump administration, keeping families together. Deport dad and mom, and the kids can go with them. But CNN puts it to soft music and lighting, and just tries to make your heart break for this poor family. Here's just I know this thing is long, and I couldn't stop watching. It's so pathetic. They don't care about the MS-13 guy in Providence. They don't care about Laken Riley or Jocelyn Ungary or the 15-year-old disabled girl who was raped in an illegal alien hotel in Massachusetts. They didn't give any of those people 5 minutes. They gave it to this large family in Pittsburgh. Here's just a quick sample.
I've literally never felt anxiety the way that I have in the last few years here.
So you are saying bye to the U.S. for good?
For good, yeah. Yeah, for good.
Fearful of President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown, Sasha, her husband Julio, and their 3 kids are leaving behind the life they built together. Julio is an undocumented immigrant from Mexico. Sasha and their 3 children are all U.S. citizens. They decided to make the move together only moments after Trump took office.
There was an executive order being signed, and that was her call for, said, what do you think about moving to Mexico? And I said, honestly, at this point, yeah, let's do it.
And they give you the 3 kids, and we're going to, they show them literally packing up their family photos in a suitcase and putting them in the car. And, this Trump administration is so mean and cruel and heartless. I'm sorry. I don't know if this makes me a bad person. I think Julio has to go. Julio's an illegal alien. Trump promised to deport them all, including him. And I'm glad the family's staying together. I'm glad they're all going. But he has to go. No exceptions. But you know what they didn't cover? At least that I saw. They didn't cover this story out of Providence, Rhode Island. This is remarkable. It is a big problem for Democrats. They have made illegal aliens their top priority. Everything they do, everything they say, every speech they make is a defense of illegal aliens. When they go to Alligator Alcatraz, they can't say, oh boy, this is pretty efficient. You know, there's a landing strip right there. We can process these monsters and get them the hell out of our country. They're fighting to keep them in our country. That's their goal, to keep the worst of the worst, which are being rounded up right now by ICE, keep them in your neighborhood. You're never going to see a better example of this than this week in Providence, Rhode Island, where ICE officers arrested a man named Ivan Rene Mendoza Meza, a 27-year-old illegal alien from Honduras, admitted MS-13 gang member. He has been charged with multiple times with dealing fentanyl in Providence, Rhode Island. So ICE goes in, gets this monster out of the community. I'm going to guess that the decent people, the American citizens, or just law-abiding citizens, were pretty happy to see Mr. Meza removed from their community, a fentanyl dealer, a gang member. And yet the Providence mayor, the state rep, the city council are all kicking and screaming and demanding that an investigation, not of Ivan Rene Mendoza Meza, of ICE, who got him and removed him from the community. This lunatic, Enrique Sanchez, is doubling down. He called, again yesterday, he called ICE Gestapo Nazi thugs and said what they did by arresting the fentanyl dealer was, quote, an act of terror. A Democrat state rep who's representing the community said it was an act of terror to arrest an MS-13 fentanyl dealer. That's where you are if you're Democrat. If you're a Democrat, your party is circling the wagons around these people who are killing Americans. It's fair. I'd say it's fair to say a fentanyl dealer, an MS-13 gang member, is killing Americans. And the state rep, the elected rep, is attacking ICE instead of thanking them. Instead of saying, thank you for getting this scumbag out of our neighborhood, they're coming after ICE and demanding an investigation and insisting that nobody cooperate with ICE. Here's the report from the local station.
These actions that ICE officials and other federal agents are committing in our city and our states are horrifying.
Providence police say ICE detained Mendoza after chasing the vehicle he was in to this home on Alverson Avenue. Representative Enrique Sanchez arrived at the end of the scene and posted this on X, saying, quote, the Nazi Gestapo ICE thugs kidnapped another of our neighbor in Providence this morning.
They're operating just as if Nazi thugs and Gestapo officials were conducting back in the 40s during World War II. They are apprehending people illegally. They're not identifying themselves. They're taking them to centers, to detention centers, to camps where people are are living in inhumane conditions.
Just like in the 40s. God, that's repulsive. I don't know why I let it bother me. This guy's a lunatic, obviously, but they vote for him. He's their rep. And he said arresting the drug dealer is just like the Gestapo, rounding up like Jewish people in Germany and Poland in the 40s. It's just offensive. It really is. And I ask this every day, but aren't you ashamed if you're a Democrat? If you're a Democrat, you're listening to one of your elected representatives calling ICE Gestapo Nazis and calling it an act of terror because they arrested a Honduran drug dealer, a, quote, self-admitted member of MS-13, unquote, according to ICE. It's just remarkable. And the mayor and the city council are demanding an investigation into ICE for doing this, for arresting this guy. These people have lost their minds. We went from the Maryland dad to the Providence neighbor. This guy says they grabbed one of my neighbors. Your neighbor was dealing drugs in your neighborhood. And you know what? They're not going to stop. They are not going to stop. These guys are doing wonderful work right now. ICE, they should be getting awards. They should be getting applauded, and they are. I'm applauding them right now. Good job, ICE. Another scumbag taken off the street. Speaking of scumbags, let's get to Adam Schiff. You know what? There's nothing better. There's nothing sweeter. There's nothing more satisfying than watching one of the leading proponents of lawfare, of just getting Trump. No one wanted to get Trump at all costs like Adam Schiff. He was on the January 6th committee, that phony committee, that TV production where they were determined to implicate Trump. They failed. And then they arrested him and charged him with 34 felonies and raided his home and you name it. We saw it. We lived through it. At the time, we said, you better be careful because what goes around comes around, and maybe it is with Shifty Schiff. According to Trump, there are Fannie Mae investigators looking into mortgage fraud on the part of Adam Schiff, who has 2 homes. He has one in Maryland and one in California. And in order to get better terms on his mortgage, he called Maryland his primary residence. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but did falsifying business records in the Stormy Daniels case, did that sound like a big deal? Did telling the crowd on January 6th to go peacefully and patriotically, did that sound like a big deal? I don't think so. I don't care. I want Schiff to squirm. I want Schiff to face justice. Trump was asked yesterday about Shifty Schiff. I'm not sure he hates anyone quite as much as he hates Schiff, and he should. Schiff is just a horrible, horrible person, a serial liar who went, you could see montages. He went on TV every night and said he's seen the evidence. Trump colluded with Russia. Russia rigged the election. He knew it wasn't true. He said it over and over again. Here's Trump asked about Schiff yesterday.
I'll tell you what, I think Adam Schiff is one of the lowest of the low. I would love to see him brought to justice. He's a dishonest, crooked guy. I don't know about the individual charge, if that even happens, but Adam Schiff is a serious lowlife.
That is true. Adam Schiff is a serious lowlife, and I don't know if they got the goods on him or not, but he might have to lawyer up because, you know what? When you do mortgage fraud, that's why I think they got Letitia James. It's all documented. It's not like there's a little gray area. If you said it was your primary residence to get better mortgage terms and it wasn't, seems pretty cut and dried. I don't know if that puts you away, or I don't know if you get censured. I don't know what the consequence will be, but it seems like if you did that in writing, in black and white, kind of like the autopen, it seems like they got the goods. You want to see, let me get this story because it's amazing. Speaking of, I love nothing more than corruption in the mainstream media, just the lies. This is astounding, even by NBC's terms. As we know, the autopen is a big scandal. As we know, Biden pardoned over 8,000 people, commuted sentences, granted clemency, or pardoned 8,000 people, including hardened criminals. Took a guy who killed children off of death row, pardoned the judge who sent kids to prison for kickbacks. Some of those kids killed themselves, just the worst of the worst. And we're supposed to believe Joe Biden knew exactly what he was doing. It's a lie. Even the New York Times admitted it. He gave categorical pardons. So he didn't know everyone he was pardoning, and they used the autopen because he wasn't involved. It's quite clear. Jeff Zients, apparently, was the autopen granting clemency and pardons to everybody. These have to be invalid. Here's what NBC reported. They are running cover for Joe Biden. They said, quote, there was an unexpected new twist in the Biden investigation. You know what the twist is? That James Comer, when he sent out subpoenas, used a digital signature. And they said, that's just like the autopen. That's a lie. It's nothing like the autopen, and they know it, and they knew it. And they did it anyway. They want to cast suspicion on Comer, but everything is done with digital signatures. It was funny. People reacted to this. They showed NHL prospects signing contracts with digital signatures. And everybody in DC now does, I mean, everyone everywhere does a little digital signature with their finger. And they want you to think that's the same as them stamping Biden's signature on something when Biden has no idea what he's doing. And that is quite clear. When they granted all these pardons on Biden's last night in office, it was after 10 p.m. Does anyone believe Joe Biden was even involved in that? Of course not. And thankfully, James Comer's not stopping yet. He is, he's going to keep coming and bring these people in and get them to, I'm going to guess, lie under oath. That's what they have to do. All right, let's get to my favorite CNN segment. I got to admit, at night when I'm flipping channels, watching things, I go by CNN every night to see if the great Scott Jennings is there doing battle 1-on-4, 1-on-5. That's what he does every night. Jennings is a star, and he's so good at this. He goes on CNN, and he just gets attacked. The host of the show is Abby Phillip, another Democrat operative with a press pass. She'll call him out and cut him off to defend the other liberals, and Jennings just rolls his eyes. He's great at this. So he's got a segment last night, and again, they've reached the point where they just lie. That's all. They lie. So they get around to the price of eggs. Remember, the price of eggs was a big deal. You know, prices of eggs were going to go up. They've gone down dramatically. But that doesn't stop them from going on air, looking in the camera, and lying. That's what Abby Phillips and the other liberals on this panel did. They go after Jennings and claim the price of eggs has gone up. This is not some vague, number about the state of the economy. This is the price of eggs. And they sit there and say, they've gone up. And Jennings is just in disbelief. He's like, what the hell are you talking about? This was an amazing segment. And it just shows how desperate they are. They're not going to tell you the truth. Whatever they can do to disparage Trump, they will do, including lying to your face. Check this out.
People are suffering. You know how I know this? Because I heard all about that from you last year when I would debate you, and you kept talking about how the price of eggs is really high. Well, guess what? It's much higher now than it was when you and I were debating.
We're literally lying about the eggs.
Wait, excuse me.
Whoa.
Guys, stop. Okay, Scott, before you accuse her of lying, I literally just went over this. She is correct that year over year, the price...
Since Donald Trump took office, what happened to the eggs?
Oh, my God. Do you not understand that the difference between...
Who was the president last year at this time?
Scott, do you understand...
And then when did they spike?
Julie, let me just resolve this so we can move on, because this is a silly conversation.
You totally derailed this conversation. She's trying to have a serious panel, and you're
are derailing the conversation.
No, I'm not.
Pardon me.
She's not telling the truth about the eggs.
But you're derailing the conversation, okay? I think people have the ability to understand the difference between the price of eggs today and the price of eggs a year ago today versus what you would prefer to talk about, which is the price of eggs when Donald Trump was inaugurated. You're just talking about his policy. You're talking about two different time horizons. Okay, let's just leave it at that and move on. Please continue.
They made it higher than what was
Continue, Chair Michael.
That is amazing. They're sitting there going, the price of eggs is up year to year. And Jennings just says, who was president a year ago? Joe Biden. And they say, no, it's a year to year, they're up. Well, that's not an indictment of Trump. I just looked it up. According to Fox Business, since January 20th, you know what has happened to the price of eggs? They've fallen 61%. Anyone who goes to the grocery store knows that. 61% since Trump took office on January 20th. And these clowns on CNN say, yeah, but year to year, they're up. So what? And Jennings is like, what? Who was president a year ago? That's what they have to do. And that's the host, by the way. Jennings will quit someday. He'll get a better offer. And Abby Phillips will be canceled in 2 weeks. She is so just consumed with hate for Trump and for Jennings that she's going to cut off her own nose here, because he's saving that friend. He's saving her show. And she hates him. And she doesn't want him there. She can't even accept the fact that he's the best thing that's happened to her. That's how deranged she is, consumed with hate for Trump, for Republicans, that she'll lie like that. And he posted it. He's great. He'll post his fights and just mock these people. He'll call them liars, which they are. And sometimes it's, again, there's some gray area. There's no gray area here. Since Trump took office, the price of eggs has plummeted. Since Trump took office, inflation is under control. And you got to admit that. If you're honest, which Abby Phillips and the rest of that panel, they're not. They want you. They literally say year to year. And he goes, so what? What does that have to do with Trump? He is so good at that. And they're going to screw it up. That's my prediction. They should give him his own show and get rid of Abby Phillips, but they won't because it's CNN. And they're in the business of fighting. They're in business of leading the resistance. That's their job. Not reporting the facts, not reporting the news, leading the resistance. But I got to admit, they suck me in. I'll sit there and I'll see Jennings on there, and then I'll say, I got to watch. This is going to be good. It's working, but the host of the damn show hates it. It's an amazing thing to watch. And if he's not on, I don't watch. You just watch to see him go 1 on 4. It's kind of fun. I don't know why it's so hard for TV people to understand that friction is good. Fights, debates, arguments, that's good TV. I mean, it's 1 on 4, 1 on 5 when it's CNN, but that kind of friction sells, that works. And yet they rarely do it. They don't do it on any cable news channel anymore. They don't fight. Why do people think, fighting is bad? Fighting raises the level of energy. Fighting brings people in. You root for one side or the other. It's just like any other competition. Before we go, speaking of competitions, let me just say I'm really disappointed in the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia. They had the All-Star game there last night. MLB, Major League Baseball All-Star game. They had the home run derby 2 nights ago. They shouldn't have done this. Georgia should have told MLB to screw. 4 years ago, Major League Baseball pulled their game out of Georgia at the last minute, moved it to Denver because they want to enforce voter ID laws in Georgia. The Democrats, Joe Biden, lied and said it was the Jim Crow laws. He said it was Jim Eagle, which is stupid, but that's Biden. The laws, the voter ID laws, as everyone knows, there's only one reason to object to voter ID laws, because you want to cheat. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. They claim it's racist. That's a lie. They know it. We all know it. Black people, brown people can get IDs just like white people. It's not that hard. Voter ID laws are everywhere. I believe U.S. and New Zealand are the only 2 places they don't enforce voter ID. Everywhere in Europe does. 48 out of 48 countries in Western Europe enforce voter ID laws. Of course, you should be able to check IDs before someone votes. So they passed a law, and MLB went along with the lie. It was the most cowardly thing I've ever seen a sports league, a commissioner do. Rob Manfred said, we want everyone to have the right to vote. He went along with the lie that the Democrats pushed, that Joe Biden pushed, that it was racist. You know what they have for laws now in Georgia? The same ones they had 4 years ago. And yet MLB went back in and played their game. When they moved it to Denver. They have stricter voter ID laws in Colorado than they do in Georgia, but that didn't matter. It's one thing to be woke and to be whatever, be liberal and left-wing. It's another thing to be cowardly, and that's what Major League Baseball was 4 years ago, and they went back to the same place, and the city, the state, took them in, celebrated it, hosted the game. They should have told them to suck it. This was, and you know what? Rob Manfred's just such a coward. MLB is just a cowardly outfit. What they did 4 years ago was disgraceful, and they should never let them forget it. But I didn't watch, not me. I was busy watching Scott Jennings and many, many other things, but screw Major League Baseball. That's my final thought. And we will leave it there for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is the Callahan Show. and we will do it again tomorrow.
But Adam Schiff is a serious lowlife.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.